this video...
Together B&B is one of the weirdest...
Parents. When you're growing up, you can't help but look up to them.
Hey guys, what's up? It is Kyonkochan person. So, long time since I've been streaming. So this stream's probably gonna suck because... No, why am I being so negative right off the back? Blah. Anyways, so yeah, just casual stuff. I'm just trying to get in the habit of, like, streaming in general. Again, so just being, like, casual watching stuff. Yeah, I hope this video is big enough. Yeah, I can kind of fine-tune stuff, so if you want me to change anything, just let me know. I can edit or change the video size and stuff, but this should be an okay size. So yeah, without further ado, I'm just gonna watch stuff and give a little commentary here and there if I feel like it.
Possible by CuriosityStream. Get the CuriosityStream Nebula Bundle deal for an all-time low sale price of $1 a month at curiositystream.com/HAI. So, in the late 1970s, the dastardly Sandinistas came to power in Nicaragua and decided to do something evil and, frankly, rather disgusting. Provide education for all the children. This cruel, red-led literary crusade forced kids out of the household and into life-size centers for kids who can't read good, which resulted not only in kids reading gooder, but also in them developing a new language from scratch. You see, until the 1970s, Nicaragua had no real deaf community, which meant isolated deaf children's only means of communication were whatever rudimentary, mimic-styled signs they invented to communicate needs to their usually hearing families. But then, the Sandinistas took deaf 4 to 16-year-olds, put them together in the country's first deaf schools, and brought in Eastern German educators to teach the kids Spanish Sign Language, which mostly involved teaching them how to use letter signs to spell out Spanish words. This wasn't very useful though, largely because the deaf kids had never been taught to read, so they didn't have a clear concept of what a word was, or what a letter was, and also importantly, they did not speak Spanish, because again, they were deaf. Rather than listening with their eyes to how their teachers wanted them to communicate, the children did something far cooler and half as interesting. They started to communicate amongst themselves. Because of the unusual confluence of circumstances, they were all coming from isolated villages without knowing how to read and without ever being taught to speak any other language. That meant they had to invent a completely new language from scratch at the same age as when most of us were putting crayons into places they didn't belong. Now, it's tough to identify when a new language is taking shape right in front of your eyes, but luckily for us, the ignored and unsuccessful teachers called for backup. Unable to get through to the children, but recognizing that the kids were communicating with one another, Nicaraguan education officials brought in a cunning American linguist, Judy Kegel, in 1986 to figure out what the kids were talking about. To make sense of what these kids were saying in a language disconnected from any established, Kegel basically had to make a Rosetta Stone to get the kids to communicate something in their sign language that she already knew in her own language. So, preempting the 8 million movie recap podcast that now plague the world, she showed each student a 90-second cartoon and then filmed them describing what they had just watched. Once she translated it, she had 2 findings. First, this language wasn't just a bunch of vocab bundled together. This language had rules. Take, for example, their sign for speak. At first, it was simple, a hand opening and closing in front of their mouth. But then, they changed it so that they would start the sign with the hand open at the speaker's position, but move it forward to the position of the person being addressed, where they would close it. That little motion is a huge deal. By incorporating information about the subject and object of a verb, the kids had intuited the concept of verb agreement, which is pretty impressive considering that you, the viewer, do not know what verb agreement is. The second thing she found was that the older children, the original architects of this whole language, leaned on rather rudimentary signing, only a few signs to describe the whole clip, while the younger students signed more complicated, time-sensitive summaries of the cartoon. This told her that the language was growing and maturing from one generation to the next. Ultimately, she was able to separate the language's development into 3 stages. First were the home signs, a few basic signs, usually just acting something out, that each kid had developed in their own individual home with their usually hearing parents. When the deaf kids came together, though, they sort of combined all their home signs to develop a basic pidgin, not the kind Pierce Morgan fed in Home Alone 2, but a limited, simplified language traditionally used to communicate between people who don't share a common language. That basic pidgin was called Lenguaje de Signos Nicaragüense, which according to Google translates to about 899,000 results. But the key component came next. Younger students came in, quickly mastered the basic pidgin developed by the older students, and then without even meaning to, elevated it to a real, full-on language which linguists called the idioma, or Nicaraguan Sign Language. Now, all this suggested that groups of young children possess a semi-mythical, unconscious, and incredibly powerful ability to not only understand, but develop language. Something that we kind of already knew based on how good kids are at coming up with new ways to make fun of adults. By continually communicating with each other, adjusting, and innovating, they came to consensus about adopting new signs, dropping others, and developing a grammatical system. It's one of humankind's most remarkable abilities, rivaled only by the ability to eat 75 hot dogs in 10 minutes. Because people can never just let a nice thing be nice, this example was quickly jumped on by experts to prove various linguistic theories, including the highly controversial concept of innate speaker capacity. It's a theory developed by linguist and anarchist Dumbledore Noam Chomsky, which argues that grammar is in part a function of innate human genetics, that there is a universal grammar programmed into our DNA, which in part explains both why children are so incredibly good at learning language and why all human languages share relatively similar structures. In the end, the point is that I couldn't think of a good ending for this video, so here's the sign the kids came up with for raccoon. While I don't know any other cool vocab or how to end my videos, I do know that we made a Nebula Plus companion video to this, compiling all the jokes we cut because they were lame, rude, or too long. I also know that CuriosityStream is currently hosting a massive Earth Day sale where subscriptions are 41% off, which comes out to well under $1 a month. And then I also know that any CuriosityStream subscription initiated at curiositystream.com/HAI includes a free Nebula subscription. And therefore I know that now is the perfect time to sign up.
Oh,
if
you're
you
gonna go
haven't
get some
already.
Sims for me,
Also,
thank you.
On CuriosityStream, you can, for example, learn about how past societies pulled off marvelous projects like the pyramids or the Great Wall of China in ancient engineering. If you're still in the mood for more documentaries after that, you can also check our new Nebula original profiling an Alaskan community struggling to hold on after the shutdown of the cruise ship industry. This Earth Day deal ends this Saturday, so sign up today for a year of CuriosityStream and Nebula for less than $1 a month at curiositystream.com/HAI.
Parents. When you're growing up, you can't help but look up to them. Literally. They're taller than you are. But is this metaphorical stature warranted? Sure, they want what's best for you, but did you know that they were probably willing to lie to you to get it? That's right, your parents lied to you about the law. The thing is, if your parents didn't go to law school for 3 years, and especially if they don't have a popular law-related YouTube channel, can you really trust them? The answer is no. And Legal Eagle is here to replace them. Sponsored by CuriosityStream and Nebula. When it comes to our parents and the law, the real question is, did our parents get anything right? And why did all of our parents tell us that you have to turn off the dome light in the car while you're driving? Well, we're gonna find out today. So let's talk about the things that your parents told you about the law that are probably not true. The first, of course, is staying home alone while your parents shopped. Kevin McAllister was home alone for several days and he totally handled it. So why is it that our parents told us that you couldn't stay home alone? I know more than a few of you fantasized about ordering a pizza and jumping up and down on your bed while your siblings were forced to spend time at some old relative's house. And of course, we all planned to do this.
I'm gonna give you to the count of 10 to get your ugly, yellow, no good keister off my property before I pump your guts full of lead.
But of course, our parents were worried that we were going to do this.
Johnny, I got so much energy. We better start doing stupid.
So I suppose this might explain why, after the success of Home Alone and its numerous sequels, why our parents didn't trust us to outwit hapless burglars on our own. And of course, they claimed that it was illegal to leave you at home, even if they were just running to the store. But is it in fact true that the state makes it illegal to leave your kids at home without supervision? Or were your parents just lying to you out of convenience? Well, the verdict? Guess what? They probably lied to you. There isn't a universal age that is considered appropriate for leaving children home alone. Only a few jurisdictions even have firm rules for how old a child must be before they can stay at home unsupervised. For example, Maryland makes it illegal to leave a child under 8 years old home alone, and a babysitter for someone under 8 must be at least 13 years old. And believe me, Maryland is not messing around, even when it's not technically against the law. Just ask the couple who let their, quote, free-range kids, aged 10 and 16, play unattended in a park, only to have Child Protective Services called on them for neglect. The parents eventually won, but not before their kids were interviewed for hours by the local government and after years of litigation. The local Maryland government, worse than Harry and Marv?
We know that you're in there and that you're all alone.
I will let you decide on that one. And Illinois sets the bar even higher. It's considered abuse or neglect to leave a minor under the age of 14 home, quote, without supervision for an unreasonable period of time, without regard for the mental or physical health, safety, or welfare of that minor. But of course, there is some wiggle room here. What is considered an unreasonable period of time? That implies that there is a reasonable period of time that you can leave a child unattended. And it's not unreasonable to leave a child at home if the child would essentially be safe. But most states leave it to their local Department of Health to create guidelines, and these local authorities consider many different factors. They consider the child's age, maturity level, how long the child's guardians are gone, whether the house and neighborhood are safe, whether the child can easily contact their parents or other adult, and most importantly, whether the child can defend themselves from two violent criminals using nothing but toys, leftover fishing equipment, and
Parents lie.
You
Big
guys give up, or you're
surprise.
thirsty for more.
So there you have it, your parents lied to you 0 to 1. Which takes us to the one that, I don't know, every single child was told when they were growing up, that you cannot have the interior lights on in the car while it's driving at night. Now, there's nothing more nerve-wracking for a parent than watching their immature 15-year-old climb into the driver's seat of a killing machine. You know, your car. What you thought would happen when you learned to drive, and what your parents thought would happen the minute you got your license. And of course, it was no picnic for your own parents when they're driving in the pitch blackout and their snot-nosed kid, i.e. you, want to turn on the interior light so you can get into even more shenanigans in the back seat. So of course, our parents all told us that whether you were driving or whether they were driving, it was of course illegal to drive with your interior lights on. But was it? The verdict? Your parents probably lied, but they probably did so for the right reason. Almost everyone watching this video remembers their parents teaching them that they could get a ticket if they drove with the overhead or mirror lights on. But think back to your actual driving test. Did they ask you a single question about leaving the interior lights on while you drove? No, they didn't. That's because, spoiler, it's not illegal. Whether it's advisable to drive with the interior lights on is a completely separate question with a different answer, but the answer is that it's really not a good idea. The light might produce glare on the windshield that makes it harder to see. If the interior is really bright, it makes it almost impossible to see stuff on the outside that's really dark. A light is also just another distraction, especially if the light is on so that you or the passenger can look at your phones or a map or anything else that pulls your attention away from the road. But think about it, the automotive industry is one of the most regulated industries in the country and has been for forever. Do you think that if it was illegal to turn the dome light on in your car, that cars would even allow you to turn that light on while it was moving? There's a million things that don't work in the car when you're actually moving. They have the technology to turn it off. But of course, that's separate from the idea of whether you should actually do it or not. And as Phil DeFranco likes to say, don't be stupid.
Breaker,
so,
niner,
parents
niner,
zero, you
teenager
too,
driving with
lying to you.
lights on in his car.
Let's talk about skipping
I'm gonna
school,
take him
because
in.
this is one thing that all parents want their kids to actually do. And as eagle-eyed observer Daniel Rodier said, it was hammered into me that it was against the law for me to not be at school. Of course, the perfectly valid reason you have for skipping school compared to what your parents think happened when you skip school. The verdict? Well, this one could go either way, but I lean on the side of this being more false than true. Now, before your parents can protest, let me explain. Although the law typically says that more than 3 unexcused absences makes a child truant, which is against the law, it's not strictly illegal for students to miss school at all times. For example, in California, a school will report students as truant if they miss school 3 times without a valid reason or permission. But what counts as a valid reason to miss school? The exceptions include, but are not limited to, religious holidays, family vacations, medical appointments, illnesses, suspensions, family emergencies, if you're the victim of bullying, or for a much-needed mental health break related to because you needed to sleep in, the weather is nice, the weather is bad, the weather is sad, it's the end of the world as we know it, it's opening day, Backstreet is back, you're a senior, a cute girl wants you to, a cute boy wants you to, the McRib is back, the movie theater's playing all 3 Lord of the Rings movies in one day, your future's so bright you gotta wear shades, there's a new Legal Eagle video, it's Tuesday, your Animal Crossing turnip farm needs attention, or you watch the Lost finale. Okay, some of these may not technically qualify as exceptions, but the law is a fluid thing. It's only not the case until someone takes it to trial and makes some case law about it. But some of these are in fact ironclad excuses for not going to school, so be sure you're taking notes. This one, your parents 0, you 3, though this might have an asterisk, this one sorta depends on the circumstances for which you are not going to school. But that takes us to the next thing that our parents said was illegal. It was that you can't drive without wearing shoes, or you can't drive wearing flip-flops. I'm talking to you, Florida. Here, of course, is what you think you look like driving barefoot, compared to what your parents think will happen when you drive barefoot. So, the question, can you legally drive without wearing shoes? Your parents thought the answer was clear, absolutely not. And of course, driver's ed instructors also reinforce the idea that you have to wear shoes to drive, potentially just because they didn't want to smell your stinky feet. But people have wondered whether it was illegal for decades. To get to the bottom of this, researcher Jason R. Heimberg did a research project in the early 90s on whether any state actually made it illegal to drive barefoot.
There was a
he
show
contacted
called
every
the
Department of Motor
Flintstones,
Vehicle
and
office in
they
the United
drove
States,
barefoot everywhere.
And it turns out
So
that none
take
of the 50 states or the District of Columbia barred shoeless driving. Alabama does have a law requiring you to wear shoes while operating a motorcycle. If you're driving a motorcycle, wear some shoes, and also a helmet and a leather jacket. But even Alabama doesn't say anything about wearing shoes in a car. But before you celebrate by burning your shoes and running to your car, there's one important loophole to think about. The Illinois Director of Driving Licensing and School Safety told Heimberg that even without a specific law on footwear, police could still give a citation. Illinois statutes 21-901A and B prohibit reckless and negligent driving. The director said, quote, "A driver charged under these articles or any article would have a right to trial where the barefoot aspect of the case might be disputed." And so the verdict. There's no specific law that seems to make driving without your shoes on illegal. It's entirely possible that some other motor vehicle law applies, and doing so would be either reckless or negligent. So your parents might have actually told the truth for once, even though they didn't actually know it. And my verdict might surprise you, but I think the police have a lot of laws that they can use to give you a ticket, just like the grand poobah of the Illinois driving safety Safety said. So the bottom line, if you get in an accident while driving barefoot, you might expect to be charged with negligence, reckless driving, or operating a vehicle in an unsafe manner. So check your local ordinances before defying your parents on this one. And as for flip-flops, all right, so that does appear to be legal, but podiatrists hate them because they destroy your feet. Safe driving experts also hate flip-flops because they tend to get caught in the gas or brake pedals. And of course, anyone that cares anything about fashion hates them because flip-flops are terribly ugly. But your parents arguably get one back. Your parents didn't lie to you on this one. Parents won, you 3. But that takes us to one last car-related issue because, again, apparently all kids cared about back in the day was being able to drive a ride in a car. And that's of course that our parents told you that riding in the back of an open pickup truck was illegal. You and your parents envisioned riding in a truck bed exactly the same way. You just had a different opinion of how it would turn out. So the question is it against the law to ride in the back of a truck?
So
and the verdict
like,
is in,
oh man, I don't want to look like a poor
it depends.
person.
Jurisdictions vary a lot on whether you can legally ride in the back of a truck. In many states, it's not against the law for anyone to roll down
Gucci
the
sandals
street
with all
in
the
back of a
fancy
truck bed.
diamonds.
Other states
and
ban
shit.
riding in truck beds except under very certain circumstances. Ohio law is pretty representative of the states that have restrictions. State law bans people 15 and under from riding in the back unless the vehicle is driven less than 25 miles per hour, or the person is seated and belted in an OEM seating position. Of course, many states now have adopted seatbelt laws that mandate that everyone in a moving vehicle actually wear their seatbelts, and the truck bed is not a likely place to find a seatbelt. So if you can't wear a seatbelt, then you can't ride in the back of a truck. But if your parents didn't want you riding in the back of a truck, they probably had really good reason. The National Highway Safety Transportation Board says that trucks are 3 times more likely to be involved in a rollover crash, and a rollover crash is responsible for the highest number of fatalities. And if you're not seat belted in to the back of a truck, your odds are not very good if you get into an actual crash. So be sure to check with your friendly neighborhood personal injury lawyer before you decide to stand up in the bed of a truck. So I'm gonna give this one to your parents, a solid not lie. Your parents 2, you 3. And then finally, let's talk about one that we all heard growing up, that you cannot put a penny on the railroad tracks because it might derail a train. As a kid, you instinctively knew how fun train tracks were. Of course, your parents were worried this would happen. And apparently the people of Reddit have been told many times that it's against the law to put a penny on the railroad tracks because it might derail the train. Really, Mom and Dad? I mean, let's see what actually happens when you put a coin on the railroad tracks. Here, YouTuber Millennium Force demonstrates exactly what would happen when you put the coin on the track. You mean the tiny coin wasn't able to derail a train that had hundreds of thousands of tons of cargo being transported? Your parents lied to you?
Well, say,
they
like,
definitely
if
lied
you could
about
derail
the
trains
derailment
like that,
part, but
they'd
that
be
still doesn't
useless.
answer the question. Is putting a coin on the railroad track illegal? And the verdict is yes, it is illegal to put coins or anything else on the railroad track. Most states penalize people if they mess with train tracks, even if it's not actually going to cause a derailment. For instance, Texas Penal Code section 28.07 makes it a crime to interfere with railroad property. This crime includes situations where a person, quote, places an obstruction on a railroad track or right-of-way. California's law makes it clear that any obstruction is a crime. Quote, every person who maliciously does either of the following is punishable by imprisonment. Places any obstruction upon the rails or tracks of any railroad or of any switch, branch, branchway, or turnout connected with any railroad. The any obstruction could even include a coin. Now, a smart lawyer could devise perhaps a decent defense because, as the video demonstrates, a flat penny is not exactly obstructing anything, but that's probably not the argument you want to have to make in court. In addition, most states make it illegal to cross train tracks at any other place than a railroad crossing. A typical state criminal trespass law looks like this one from Kentucky. Quote, it shall be unlawful for any person without the consent of the railroad to go upon the track, property, or right-of-way of a railroad other than to pass over the track, property, or right-of-way at a public or private crossing. Therefore, hanging out by the train tracks to test the penny theory is probably technically trespassing. So that seems to even things out. Your parents 3, you 3, and now we go on to the lightning round where we talk about ding-dong ditching, the act of going to someone's doorbell, ringing it, and then running away. When I asked this question in the community section, someone said their parents warned them that it was illegal to play a game called Rat-a-tat Ginger. And according to Wikipedia, this is an American variant of a game known as alternatively Knockdown Ginger, Ding Dong Ditch, Chap Door Run, Chappies, Knock Knock, Zoom Zoom, Belfast Knick-Knack, and numerous other variants. Now, I promise I am not making any of those up. These are various things for what we Americans call ding-dong ditching. But the essence of the ding-dong door ditch is ringing a doorbell and then running away before someone answers it. And these days, your parents and you probably have the same general idea about why someone would do this or why you shouldn't be doing this. Yeah, YouTube stunts don't always turn out the way that we think they do. But could this actually constitute illegal trespassing? The verdict? Well, your parents probably spoke the truth. It probably is illegal to play the game known as ding-dong door ditching or any of the ridiculous UK variants of that name, because you're probably trespassing on private property. Here's how it breaks down. When the property has a sign that says no trespassing, you can't knock on the door for any reason. But if you ring the doorbell or knock when the house doesn't have a sign, this is probably legal if you're there for a legitimate reason, like selling candy bars so you can go to band camp or whatever camp you wanted to go to. But if you're just there to disturb the homeowner and then run or hide away, well, the property owner could potentially call the cops. And unfortunately, there are lots of stories of angry homeowners doing really bad things to children who ring the doorbell and then run away. Not that those people are justified. You can see my entire video on the case of the shotgun booby trap. That's highly illegal. But your parents are probably more concerned about you being safe than being arrested for trespass. So okay, fine, maybe your parents didn't lie about absolutely everything, but you still can't trust them. Especially because I explain a whole bunch more honorable mentions of things that you out there in the community provided, of things that your parents said which were clearly not illegal and clearly were said only for their own convenience. Because I put an extended version of this video on Nebula. If I talked on the hour drive home, they could legally do a citizen's arrest. In fact, almost all of my videos have an ad-free extended version that comes out early on Nebula, and now you can get a huge discount bundled with CuriosityStream. Because sometimes talking about things that your parents said were illegal that actually weren't.
Most people think of our history as a consistently forward march towards civilization, as we achieved one landmark after another in various fields to reach where we are today. If you actually study history, though, you'd come to the conclusion that it's actually made up of vast periods of absolutely nothing of note and rare, unprecedented moments of massive change and transformation that changed the world for good and bad. It's no exaggeration to say that modern civilization wouldn't exist without any of these monumental, game-changing turning points in history. While some of them were a result of other influential events of the time, others, like our decision to walk on 2 feet, had no reason to happen at all. Number 10. Bipedalism. Getting up and walking on 2 feet comes naturally to almost every one of us, though evolutionarily speaking, it's one of the weirdest traits found in nature. No other branch of life has evolved to do that, as it provides no immediate benefits to the early adopters. The cost of making yourself visible to predators in the wild by standing up far outweighs the long-term benefits of freeing our hands to make complex tools. That's why bipedalism is still one of evolutionary biology's most enduring mysteries, as we don't understand why we developed it. The reasons notwithstanding, our decision to walk upright was a game-changing one. It didn't just free up our hands to build complex tools and techniques to survive in the wild, but also led to bigger brains that allowed us to ultimately dominate the planet. Number 9. Domestication of the horse. We've been driving around in cars for so long that we've forgotten that it's a fairly recent development in human history, as it's barely been 100 years since commercial automobiles entered the market. For around 6,000 years before that, the most common and effective mode of transport was the trusted horse. Not just transport, but the domestication of the horse in the Eurasian steppe also gave way to organized cavalry-heavy armies across the region. Some Eurasian empires, such as the Mongol and Han empires, rose entirely on the back of the horse's superiority on the battlefield. The domestication of the horse and its dominance on the battlefield, combined with its ability to travel long distances without fatigue, allowed large empires and kingdoms with complex trade networks to flourish across the Eurasian region, giving shape to the world of today.
Damn you horses! You've been betraying us from the start.
A common mode of travel up until the 1800s, when the steam locomotive rapidly outpaced its ability to reliably travel large distances. Number 8. 536 AD, the worst year ever. Picking the worst year in human history is an almost impossible task, as our species has seen a lot of exceptionally horrible years. According to one medieval historian, Michael McCormick, though, the answer is simple: 536 AD. It was the year Europe, the Middle East, and huge parts of Asia were engulfed by ash from a massive volcanic eruption in Iceland, plunging almost the entire northern hemisphere into darkness for over 18 months. Even during the summer, temperatures barely went higher than 2 degrees Celsius, causing livestock and crops to die in droves. The events of the year 535 AD kickstarted many events that would end up changing the region forever. It directly paved the way for the mass devastation of the plague of Justinian in 541 AD, especially in the Eastern Roman Empire, where it killed over half of its population that was already starving due to crop failure.
Hold on a second and think about that. over half of the population of the Roman Empire. That's insane. Imagine half of any population being wiped out anywhere in the world. That is just an incredible loss of human life. Every time I hear that, it always astounds me.
Widespread famine. That eventually led to the fall of the Eastern Roman Empire, creating a power vacuum in the region that was soon filled by other larger empires, especially in the Middle East. Number 7. The year 1918. If you take a look at the most influential years in history, few would match up to 1918. For one, it was the end of the First World War. The huge European empires of the previous centuries had suddenly ceased to exist, leaving massive devastation across the world. As 3 of the largest empires in history collapsed, German, Austro-Hungarian, and Ottoman, by the end of the war, it gave way.
Also, you could argue the end of World War I was the beginning of the end of other empires, too. The British Empire and the French empires both really started to crumble after World War I. A big reason being the people who fought in World War I as part of the Continental Armies and other armies, now, for one, had training in military affairs, but they also saw their service as a way for them to advocate for having some freedom and self-governance, because after you fight for people, it's usually pretty fair to expect some tit for tat or like return favor, you know?
To new countries across the region, and with it our modern idea of nationalism. The war also ended the Russian Empire, as it was overthrown by the Bolsheviks in the Russian Revolution of 1917. That, combined with a reduced workforce, with higher bargaining power, bolstered calls for better workers and human rights across Europe and its colonies, as it inspired other parallel revolutions throughout the industrialized world. Many of them succeeded, even in part as they forced their governments to enact more democratic policies. 1918 was also the year of the Spanish flu, one of the deadliest pandemics in history. According to some estimates, it infected about 1/3 of the entire human population at that time. It completely transformed our approach to public health as countries around the world scrambled to upgrade their healthcare systems. If some historians are to be believed, the Spanish flu was also the reason behind the end of the war, as the conditions of the war hastened the spread of the virus, devastating entire parts of the population in countries like Britain, France, India, and the USA, and turning public opinion against the war. Number 6. The Black Plague and Renaissance. The Black Death in the 14th century remains the deadliest pandemic in history. By some estimates, up to 200 million people lost their lives due to the disease across Asia, Africa, and Europe, which was the worst affected region. The European population was reduced from an estimated 80 million to around 20 million people, making it one of the continent's deadliest disasters ever. The plague also caused some unintended changes across European society, as the workforce was suddenly reduced by a massive amount by the end of the plague. As there were less people to do the same job as before, there was a push towards developing technologies that reduced dependence on labor. The people that survived the plague also had more bargaining power than before, as they demanded better working hours and higher pay. That was the beginning of the Renaissance, a period of widespread social and technological change across Europe. It also hastened the fall of feudalism, as the sheer number of serfs required to maintain the system simply didn't exist anymore. The period would be a defining one for the continent, as many historians believe the technological and social changes of the following centuries wouldn't have been possible without the widespread devastation of the Black Plague. Number 5. End of World War II, 1945. The Second World War was by far the biggest war we've ever seen, as almost every country in the world was involved in it in some way. However, the war itself did little to shape up the new world. It was what happened after it that really defined modern history. The year 1945, claimed by many historians to be the beginning of contemporary history, was important for many reasons. It was the unofficial beginning of the Cold War, as both the Soviets and the Western free market powers moved to secure as much post-war territory as possible. The unannounced rivalry between Soviet-style socialism and free market capitalism, clearly visible in post-war borders across Europe and Asia, would end up defining the modern era. It was also the beginning of the nuclear age, and with it, intentionally or unintentionally, the modern technological era. The Cold War would end up taking us to space, inspiring immense innovation in fields like medicine, communications, and infrastructure, and leading us to develop terrifying weapons of mass destruction that no one had ever dreamt of. 1945 was also when our modern ideas of human rights took shape, as the United Nations was set up to ensure that things didn't go out of control like that again. Number 4. The Agricultural Revolution.
You know, I really wonder about, the Cold War and nuclear weapons and all that. I really wonder if we've actually reached a point where, because of those kind of things, it's totally changed the way we look at things. The kind of devastation you can wreak with nuclear weapons is unlike any other weapon around, because the devastation is just so immediate and powerful and immense and terrifying. Any explosion is terrifying, but a nuclear explosion is just instantly a huge amount of energy being released on a scale that's very hard to fathom. You read reports of people that first witnessed them, and they were impressed, but also hit by a degree of overwhelming terror in some cases. But history is nothing if not apathetic to idiots. So I don't know if the knowledge of nuclear weapons and the danger they pose is enough that it'll keep people at bay from using them in years to come, because that's really all it takes is one idiot with the launch codes who, just doesn't give a shit, just doesn't give enough shits, launches it, and lo and behold, we find ourselves in who knows what kind of world. It's one of those things you kind of wonder, why do we even have nuclear weapons still? I know there's some diplomacy behind it, but it's sort of, it's one of those things where you think, should we trust anybody with this?
We've been growing our food for so long that we forget that we've been hunter-gatherers for most of our history. The agricultural revolution happened about 10,000 years ago, though Homo sapiens could be traced back as far as 200,000 years. That single step in our evolution caused profound changes in human society, steering us towards the current path in more ways than we can count. As we settled down and started farming for sustenance instead of hunting whatever we could find, a big chunk of our population was freed to do other tasks. Not everyone had to be a proficient killer anymore, as people could now pursue specialized interests like metalworking, religious theory, or politics. Farming gave rise to social stratification as society was quickly divided into whoever held the means of producing food and weapons and whoever didn't. While that led to rapid and efficient growth, allowing farming communities to get bigger and more powerful than ever before, it also separated society into haves and have-nots. It was also the beginning of mass viral outbreaks as we started living in close proximity to livestock. While it was certainly a game-changing event in human history, as farming does allow a lot more production and growth than hunting and gathering,
it's really astounding when you think about it, the scale of what agriculture and being able to grow our own food introduced to the human dynamic. In a lot of ways, it's greater than any modern technology, anything like a smartphone or the internet or something like that, because at that point, what we've essentially done is completely change the nature of survival, because almost every other species on the planet, except for a few, like beavers and other animals that engineer their surroundings, have to pretty much make do with what nature provides, and their populations will grow and fluctuate without any ability to control it of their own. And so their destiny in a lot of ways is just to be the most savage, cruel, cynical, sadistic beings around, so they can make sure they survive when harsh times comes, and they can give birth to generations of big, muscular, strong animals that will survive and carry on their genes. But with humans, we've changed that dynamic because suddenly we can value things that don't require pure survivalism. We have time to devote now to writing, reading, studying astronomy, geography, mathematics, figuring out better ways to do things that might take a little bit of time to experiment. We could essentially condense experimentation into specialization groups and people who could use that time to try new things to their best advantage because they knew more than anyone else what didn't work.
The decision to settle down and farm certainly had its costs. Number 3, Spring of Nations, 1848. The Spring of Nations, also known as the People's Spring, was a period of mass upheaval and political change across Europe. It was a mass pushback against centuries of monarchism fueled by degrading working conditions, state repression, and a wave of liberalism sweeping across major European economies at the time. The revolution started with localized revolts in Italy and France, but soon spread to almost every European empire except Russia, Spain, and Scandinavia. A lot of those revolts had a nationalistic side too, as local populations demonstrated their anger against decades of foreign imperialist rule. While the revolutions were brutally crushed in most countries, it led to equalizing reforms in countries like Belgium and the Netherlands. It was, however, wildly successful in France. The French Revolution of 1848 led to the establishment of the French Second Republic, as the idea of universal suffrage was reintroduced into the constitution. Number 2. Golden Age of Islam. The Golden Age of Islam refers to a nearly 600-year-long period of scientific, economic, cultural, and social transformation in the Middle East that shaped up the modern world. Coinciding with the Dark Ages in Europe, the period was characterized by massive progress in technology, medicine, culture, and literature. Fueled by the economic prosperity of the Abbasid Caliphate, Baghdad quickly came up as the center of science and medicine in the world. This was when a lot of the knowledge lost in the dark eras of the previous centuries was retrieved, as the caliphs extended invitations to scholars from across the world. This period was so influential for science that at its peak, Arabic was the language of science throughout the known world, hence algebra, algorithm, etc. There was also a golden age of art and literature, as numerous ancient Greek, Chinese, Indian, and Persian works were rediscovered and translated into Arabic for record keeping. It was also when the ancient Chinese technique of making paper was developed on a mass scale for the first time, allowing more knowledge to be generated and preserved than ever before. Even if it was abruptly ended by the Mongol invasion of 1848, which included the infamously brutal siege of Baghdad, the Golden Age of Islam was the birthplace of many parts of modern life, making it one of the most influential eras for humankind. Number 1. The Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution was one of the most influential periods in our history, and its impact on society goes beyond just the mechanization of labor. Fueled by rapidly depleting resources in Europe, especially Britain, and the emergence of fossil fuels like coal and gas, the Industrial Revolution changed the way we use energy. Rather than just using the energy retrieved from sources like the sun, with coal, we could now store and manipulate energy in any way we want. As factories started deploying even more advanced tools and technologies to increase production, the labor force had to migrate from rural areas to urban, industrialized regions, giving rise to some of the largest metropolises of today. The Industrial Revolution also saw massive changes in popular thought as more and more educated people worked together in factories, and they started demanding better rights and working conditions. Unfortunately, it was also a revolution in war technology, as powerful industrialized empires looked to expand their territory to further aid production. As we got better at civilian technology, the same improvements we used to make our weapons deadlier than ever before, leading to some of the most devastating wars in human history. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like videos about historical trends that matter, make sure you check out one of my newer channels, Explored, that covers current events and important historical questions.
Things I think I've ever seen on Steam, and a perfect Together B&B is one of the weirdest things I think I've ever seen on Steam, and a perfect example of how Steam's quality
That grass simulation though, bro.
assurance is just a complete joke. It's part dating simulator, part hunting sim, part open world survival horror. It's a game that really just reinforces that idea of how something can become absolutely and hopelessly lost in translation.
Anything else?
Developed by Korean devs Aurora Games, whose only other accolade to date has been a VR-only title called Together VR, which also has a less than stellar Steam rating. Still though, it rates higher than Together B&B, though that's not really saying much. But I think any game that gets a mostly negative rating is still ironically often worth checking out, simply because for something to be this universally disliked, it has to have something in there that makes it worthwhile. And I don't know, I just can't help myself. I'm like a fly attracted to a dog turd. I've just got to check it out.
I fear to watch, yet I cannot turn away.
Well, after having played this thing for 4 or 5 hours, much too long now to ever possibly get a refund, I can kind of see why it's got that rating.
Asshole.
Unfortunately, no one can simply be told what Together B&B is. You have to see it for yourself. So let's talk about it then, shall we?
Thank you.
Right, well, the premise in this one is that you're playing as a guy named James, and in the prologue you get a call from a girl named Emily, who lives at your brother's B&B, where you find out that he's gone missing.
Oh my god, thank goodness. Your brother went out and haven't returned since then.
Apparently too, you needed there right away.
Oh man, that is top tier voice acting.
to get food for the other tenants because, I don't know, they can't simply go out and buy it themselves.
Can you come over and help us?
Once you get there,
Oh,
you're
no.
greeted by a girl who
Bless
looks
them,
like
though.
a K-pop
Bless them.
singer named Nana.
They're trying.
Yeah, Nana.
Wait a moment.
I mean, does that name have a different meaning outside of...
I mean, to be fair, I sound like shit when I try and speak another language too, so, you know, they're probably doing better than I ever have.
Korea? Because where I come from, that's what we call our grandmother.
Akitaki.
Anyway, Nana's apparently a social media influencer with tens of thousands of followers. Lol. And for some reason she takes a selfie with the player like she's Pagan Min at the start of Far Cry 4.
How do we know she isn't?
Nana then introduces you to Emily, who's a high school history teacher that looks like she's in her 20s but dresses like a middle-aged housewife.
That makes sense.
You follow Emily around the house for a bit while she makes tea, and if nothing else, you do have to kind of admire the amount of detail that's gone into this place. Looks pretty damn decadent, and I'm not really sure how someone on a high school teacher's salary is able to afford it. There's plenty of bedrooms, there's a wine cellar, even a goddamn rooftop bar with an infinity pool, not to mention some pretty gorgeous views. About all it's missing is glass toilet seats and mirrored ceilings. You can even head out back and shoot some hoops at your very own basketball court. There's even a cinema room where you can sit back and
It's fucking raw!
relax and watch stock footage of the ocean or cats falling asleep.
I like it though.
After sitting down with Emily, who lays the whole thing out, you then meet Vera, a Russian girl whose only job seems to be complaining about how bad the coffee tastes. Before Nana shows up again, and at this point in the story is usually where the girls would say that they're having trouble paying their rent and wondering if they could all work something out. I mean, I've been on the internet long enough to see where this is heading. But no, instead of that, they just all bugger off to their rooms, lock themselves in, and that's about it. Occasionally you might see one of them walking around or going swimming, but to call these girls reclusive is a bit of an understatement. Anyway, after that you go into your brother's bedroom to start snooping around, where you find out that he's got a drawer full of sex pills and handcuffs, not to mention a pistol in his desk. You then also find a bunch of business cards and have to head off to meet the local business owners to see if they know about his whereabouts. The only problem is you've got no car, so you instead have to walk. Yeah, the 900 or so meters it is to the first store. At this point I came across a deer just standing in the middle of the road, completely minding its own business. So I did what anyone would do and I shot it. And this becomes one of the game's core mechanics because shooting animals with either your pistol or an assault rifle and then selling their remains is one of the few ways you can make money. Or you can kill them in a more non-traditional manner, death by car. Yeah, an elegant weapon for a more civilized age.
Asshole.
The first store you come across is a gift shop that sells a bunch of useless crap. And this also becomes pretty important because you're gonna have to eventually buy these girls gifts to get in their good graces. But we'll get into that later.
Thanks.
Yeah, I love to how the guy minding the store doesn't even flinch when he sees me walking in holding a goddamn handgun. Anyway, old mate behind the counter's name is Eric, and sadly, he doesn't know where your brother's gone either.
So he left all the B&B stuff for you to take care?
And after he walks off into the back room, just leaving this pile of expensive jewels on the counter like an idiot, you've seen all there is to do here. Next up, you go to the market, which happens to sell, I think, every single fruit and vegetable that's ever existed. I mean, this place also sells 9 different kinds of bread alone. So could someone please explain to me how these girls are running out of food when this place exists like 5 minutes down the road? The guy running the market's name is Ken, who happens to be Eric's brother. And the first thing this guy does is bring up his dad's funeral.
Thanks for attending my dad's funeral last time.
Yeah, way to bring the mood down. And the voice acting for all of this, in case you haven't noticed yet, is kinda terrible. I mean, look, I'm not trying
것이오.
동지들 도와줘!
주권자님은 서해 군대를 이기셨습니다.
용병이다!
총사령관님이 우리 태극기 아래 하나로 뭉칠 것이오.
박 사령관님께서 당신을 기다리십니다. CIA가 함께 했다는 걸 믿을 수가 없어.
박, 솔직히 말해서 CIA LT해성은 상관도 안 해. Listen to me, damn it. You get any more of my men killed and you won't be able to set foot in Kusong without getting turned into hamburger. Are we clear? Good. Now then. Colonel Gian, the Jack of Diamonds, is holed up in a mountain fortress shelling this whole area with heavy artillery. He's got a gun aimed at Seoul he's been dying to use, and since his master Song has got the AN all tied up, he's decided now's as good a time as any to murder tens of thousands of civilians. Need I say more?
Your primary objective is to destroy all the artillery before Seoul is leveled. Jack of Diamonds, eh? Have we got a plan this time?
Yeah, I'm just gonna shoot some bad guys, throw some grenades, verify the colonel, then I'm gonna order my custom-built Lamborghini with diamond-encrusted wheels.
지금 있는 소련 놈들은 이 땅의 전염병이요.
I'm tracking the current casualties in the city. If you don't stop the shelling before 25,000 civilians are killed, Buford will pull the plug on this operation.
난 공격당했어.
You've destroyed the first battery. artillery in the hills.
This thing is about to blow.
나 공격당했어. 여기서 보내. 당장.
almost free.
You've destroyed the first battery. Only one more left. SNS, that should be all of the artillery. Wait, what's that? Your SNS signal's being jammed. Support options are back online.
Damn it! Gotta bail!
나쁜 놈. 진입자들 꼭
Your SNS signal's being jammed. Support options are back online. Your SNS signal's being jammed.
공격해. 뒤에.
nearby. Check your radar for the location. Good work. Only one more left. options are back online. My God, how could the Allies have missed that gun? You've got to destroy it! What options are back online? There's the jack.
진입자들 꼭두각시 돌격! 공격해!
Well.
침략자들 후퇴!
Roger, this is Expo 2. I am in the air. I see your smoke. I'm at the ALZ. I am taking enemy fire.
퇴각!
I am taking enemy fire.
Oh.
돌격! 진입자들 꼭두각시 공격해! 피해! 나쁜 놈! 돌격! 죽어! 이 돼지 같은 놈! 공격해!
still be worth something to the Allies.
돌격! Подохни, собака! Вперед! Схватить! Не стрелять! Наемник! Looking for some extra cash, eh?
Okay, now we can get something done, eh? And no one will know it was us. Except you and me, right, mercenary? Someone, the Chinese, the South Koreans, have spies in my ranks. I'm not sure who it is, but I have some men I suspect. Kill them all, just to be sure. These guys they send...
I have some refinements to add to Sergei's offer. Watch for an email from me.
it just me, or does Sergei seem a little crude, even for a mafia boss?
They would just kill. Prison with another psycho. Maybe this, Joseph.
Well, I watch out for him, too. I'm forwarding you an email. Joseph is personally offering a bonus if you can finish this job quietly. Joseph just gave you access to a support item he thought you might find useful. I've identified the allied officer for you. Looks like he's giving a press conference. Don't let the journalists see you take him out.
Okay, I'm on my way.
미국 CIA가 당신 군대로 우리를 싸웁니다. 우리는 목숨을 걸고 막아야 합니다.
Special delivery.
Наемник!
People of Korea, do not speak to foreign devils who have come for our land.
I have no personal knowledge of the Russian mafia's operations in this area.
It's the mercenary.
I assure you, members of the press, that we're doing everything.
총사령관님은 한국인의 아버지는 다름없습니다.
As to allegations that we're employing private military companies in this theater, I have no comment.
People of Korea, do not speak to foreign devils who have come for our land.
No personal knowledge of the Russian mafia's operations in this area.
One down, 3 to go. I've identified the prisoner for you. He appears to be in an SK vehicle moving at high speed. I wonder where they're headed in such a hurry.
이봐, 미리 돌아와.
General Song is the duly elected leader of this sovereign nation.
I've identified the SK officer. SK forces appear to have secured the entire area. It seems like they were waiting for the arrival of the NK prisoner. They're loading the prisoner onto the chopper. The SK officer is getting on board the helicopter. I don't think that's what Joseph had in mind by quietly. Good work, you're halfway there.
우리는 서로 뭉쳐서 중국과 미국 침략자들과 싸워야 합니다.
of the Russian mafia's operations in this area.
One down, 3 to go. I've identified the prisoner for you. He appears to be in an SK vehicle moving at high speed. I wonder where they're headed in such a hurry. Good work, you're halfway there. I've identified the SK officer. SK forces appear to have secured the entire area. It seems like they were waiting for the arrival of the NK prisoner. It won't take long for word of the prisoner's death to reach the SK officer. Better hurry.
Okay, I'm on my way. Special delivery.
The SK officer is getting on board the helicopter. Don't let that chopper get too far, or it's contract cancelled. I can't track the target if you don't keep him in close range. Remember, we only get paid if we nail all 4 of them. You're about to lose the target. SK forces appear to have secured the entire area. It seems like they were waiting for the arrival of the NK prisoner. It won't take long for word of the prisoner's death to reach the SK officer. Better hurry. The SK officer is getting on board the helicopter. Don't let that chopper get too far, or it's contract cancelled. There you go, only 1 target left. I've identified the Chinese tank commander. I think he's on patrol in one of his tanks.
끝에! 저기야!
That was the last target. Mission bounty is being transferred as we speak.
Proceed. 你唔可以同時打兩場仗嘅喎。
我可以將會，因為我一定要。我將帶領我嘅軍隊同宋將軍作戰，我嘅軍隊亦都要同 Agent Buford 代理嘅軍隊作戰。等一切結束嗰陣時，淨係只有我可以生存。
Excellent. You are prompt and discreet. Of this I approve. I have another contract for you. Song's troops control an artillery base near Kaesong. Traditionally, its guns were aimed south. But now that our presence in the area is secure, he aims his guns at us. Take out the artillery and their commander, Colonel Wan Jaegao. The Allies designate him the King of Diamonds. Colonel Jaegao is a
Jaegao has a reputation as an especially cruel leader. He tortured his own men if they were less than perfect.
I bet they were well motivated. gotta bail.
这是自己。
All Koreans will give their lives to defend your homes.
Okay, I'm on my way. Special delivery.
파샤! 救命啊!
우리나라를 침략하고 우리를 노예로 만들 수 없습니다.
Your SNS signal's being jammed. If you want to get past that gate, you'll need to call in some heavy firepower or find a North Korean vehicle. jammed.
후퇴! 공격해!
수류탄, 기어, 가판을 차!
시민자들 꼭두각시!
밑으로 숙여. 정지.
That's one artillery weapon destroyed. Two down, three to go. That's the third one. You only have 2 left to destroy.
침략자들! 적군을 찾았다!
Now get that last one and you'll be set. Support options are back online. Good news. I've identified the King of Diamonds' location for you.
I am in the air. I see your smoke. I'm at the LZ.
Excellent work. We should receive payment shortly.
Okay, that is the stream. My microphone didn't break or anything. I just didn't really have anything to chat about, so hope people enjoyed the quiet gameplay. And yeah, stream again sometime soon. Alright, all you awesome people, take care.